We're engaged in an annual ritual on the floor of the Senate, the budget resolution. The budget resolution comes to the floor, and Senator Enzi of Wyoming, Senator Sanders of Vermont lead the effort to debate the budget resolution. This is not a law because it's never sent to the president. It is something passed by the House and the Senate that kind of says, the president told us we couldn't spend anything more than X. We'll tell you how we would spend it, which always is different from what the president suggested. And so we get into a debate about how we are going to spend our federal budget. And that's what a budget resolution is all about. And we have to make choices, just like families make choices when it comes to things that they buy for their families and for their homes. So I'd like to tell you about an amendment I'm going to offer, which gives us a choice. First, let me tell you that today on Capitol Hill, we have visitors walking the corridors wearing purple sashes. And if you look closely, written on those sashes, it says Alzheimer's Association. It's not unusual for us to get visits from people who are interested in medical issues, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, the list goes on, as you can imagine. And they come here basically with a very fundamental request. Can you find more research dollars to help us find a cure? Can you provide support to the families who are facing this disease? I've faced it so many times as a congressman and as a senator. I use this as an illustration because Alzheimer's is a disease and an issue which is becoming more dominant in America. I'm about to tell you a statistic which I didn't believe when I heard and went back and checked and double-checked, and it's true. I have spoken on the floor here about 3 minutes. In that 3-minute period of time, 3 Americans have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. 1 American is diagnosed with Alzheimer's every 68 seconds in America. It is a disease which is starting to gallop across our nation and affect more and more families. And it is expensive, costly. Costly, of course, to the victim who loses touch with the people they love and the life they want to lead. Costly, too, to the caregivers, the children, the spouses, and others who turn their lives around and start to dedicate it to caring for the person with Alzheimer's. Last year in America, we spent $200 billion on Medicare and Medicaid for Alzheimer's victims, and sadly, the projection is in just a few years, we're going to see this figure surpass $1 trillion. It will literally eat up the Medicare and Medicaid programs as we know them. That's one disease, but it's one that is so serious that we have to take it seriously. I could speak in personal terms, and I bet everyone can, about cancer and what it has meant to my family, what it means to families all across America. Here's what it gets down to. Will we make a decision as a nation to make the right investment in biomedical research? We have the best biomedical research agency in the world, National Institutes of Health. Nobody even questions that. Center for Disease Control, right by its side, and the work that they do. Department of Defense, Veterans Administration, even the Department of Energy, all do work in relation to medical research and medical technology. So the question that is posed to us, this generation of senators sitting on the floor, is, are you going to further research in areas that can cure disease, alleviate human suffering, and yes, reduce the cost to the government? I have found this is the most bipartisan issue in the world. I've been all over Illinois, and we have a lot of Republicans, Democrats, and independents. And when I stop to talk about biomedical research, everybody's on board. The mother with a diabetic son, the father with a wife suffering from some form of cancer. They're all on board. They're listening, and they should. And what I'll offer as an amendment here is generally just a marker. It doesn't mean that medical research will be enhanced or grow in size, but it basically puts us on record as to whether or not the United States Senate believes that we should invest additional money into biomedical research. Why should we put more money into it? I went out to the National Institutes of Health. There's a doctor out there named Francis Collins. I think he's one of the best. Francis Collins, back in 1988, if I'm not mistaken, was given the task of mapping the human genome. I'm a liberal arts lawyer, Mr. President, so I'm lost. The human genome has something to do with our DNA and tells the people who research it a lot about us and diseases we are likely or not likely to have. So they mapped the human genome, which took years to do, and with that information, they are making giant strides now in finding cures for diseases and breakthroughs in identifying some of these issues. We all read about Angelina Jolie and what she's going through with her fear of cancer. And it is based on a family history, medical advice, and yes, something that has been found in her DNA through the Human Genome Project that leads her to be more sensitive and worried about her own health. She's a famous actress, and that's why we pay close attention. But it applies to families across the board. So here's the point I'm getting to. We are falling behind in biomedical research. In the last 10 years, we have lost 23% of our spending power to fund medical research. That means that 10 years ago, 1 out of every 3 promising research projects was funded. Today, it's 1 out of 6. I don't need to tell the senator from Maryland, Senator Cardin here, because NIH is in his state, and he knows what they do, and he knows the researchers, and Dr. Collins. Well, I went to Dr. Collins, and I said to him, what can we do in the United States Congress to help you find cures for diseases? Senator, he said, it's very basic. Give us 5% real growth in our appropriation for 10 straight years. 5% over inflation. Give me that, Senator, and I promise you, we'll pay for it over and over again in saving money on medical treatment, in alleviating the suffering and disease that we face in this country. And that's what I'm trying to do. The American Cures Act is legislation I put in to do that. Well, what'll it cost, Senator? It's easy to come up with some idea on the floor that's going to cost a lot of money and not pay for it. What'll it cost us? Over a 10-year period of time, a 5% real growth increase in NIH, CDC, and the other departments I mentioned, over a 10-year period of time, that additional spending comes to $150 billion. Mr. President, in that 10-year period of time, we will appropriate more than $15 trillion in federal spending. Work the decimal points. I'm talking about a tiny sliver of a small percentage that goes into medical research. And I'm also saying I'm willing to stand here as a senator and promise you that medical research will pay for itself over and over and over again. I'm of an age that I can remember the fear of polio. Some folks with gray hair may remember that too. When as a kid, kids were coming down with polio, crippled by it, many of them living in iron lungs, and parents were scared to death. We didn't know where it was coming from. My mother had a theory that it had something to do with water standing in the street. Don't you go play in that puddle, you may get polio. Who knew? No one knew, but we were afraid because we knew fellow classmates who were getting polio. And then 60 years ago, along comes Jonas Salk. Every school child in America knew that name. Oh, we didn't look forward to that shot, that's for sure. But the notion that we would be liberated from the fear of polio, that was such an amazing discovery. It was national and international news. Medical research can do that. Jonas Salk did that. We've done it over and over again. So now will our generation give up on biomedical research? Will we decide that balancing the budget, eliminating the deficit is more important than a small contribution toward the National Institutes of Health? I hope not. The amendment I'll offer will ask the Senate to go on record to support this effort. Senator Moran from Kansas was here earlier. He has a similar amendment. I hope my colleagues will consider passing both of them. I'm going to vote for Moran's amendment, Senator Moran's amendment. I hope he votes for mine. Let's be bipartisan about this. Let's find something we can agree on. Let's make it biomedical research. Let's make it a commitment to the NIH. I know that the people that we represent in every state of the union will say, you did the right thing, Senator. Put politics aside. Give the money to those researchers to find the cures for those diseases. It's not only going to save us money, it's going to save lives.